We have 2 minutes. I show 1 minute. And I have 9:30.
Okay, let's call to order the meeting of the Western Municipal Water District Board of Directors. Tammy, would you please conduct a roll call?
Thank you. Good morning. Director Torres.
I'm here.
Director Dinstead.
Good morning, I am present.
Good morning. Director Roten.
Here.
Director Risby.
Good morning, I'm here.
Good morning. President Gardner.
I am here.
Thank you. President Gardner, you do have a quorum today.
Great, thank you very much. This morning, we are going to be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Cody Wotena, Safety Compliance Coordinator in the Human Relations Department. Cody, thank you.
Good morning. Cody Watsena, Safety Compliance Coordinator. Been with Western for a little over 7 months now.
Welcome.
So still a little green, but ready for a long second career.
Great.
Ready? Begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Cody, it's your second career from what?
Navy Seabees for 21 years prior to, sir.
Yay.
Service.
Great.
Thank you very much.
Okay, brings us to public comments. Do we have any?
Director Gardner, last meeting, we did receive 2 public comments after the deadline. Those will be provided to the board. They were related to item 7C on the agenda. For this meeting, we have no comments and no requests to speak.
Okay. Sounds good. We'll move on to presentations. Greg, would you like to do an introduction of Mr. Gray?
Sure. Chris Gray from WRCOG is here today, and he's going to talk about demographics and trends. You may recall, I lost track of it. We were talking about this yesterday. We at the Riverside County Water Task Force, we talked about population trends and where it's going, and I thought, oh, that was a couple months ago, and Chris was like, oh, that was last year. Time flies. But good to hear more about, there's such discussion about trends, especially in growth, and so they've done a lot of work on this, so it's really good to hear the data. So Chris, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig. Thank you, members of the board. I'm happy to be here. As Craig said, I'm Chris Gray, WRCOG's Deputy Executive Director. Some of you know me. Ms. Denstead is on our board. Ms. Roten knew me when she was on our board, and I know many of you. By the way, I live in Ms. Torres's, Director Torres's district. I live in Sycamore Creek, so I actually live in the Western Water area, and the Temescal Valley, formerly Lee Lake Water District, is actually my water provider. So I'm actually here as one of your residents. So this is the DeBoer-Cog subregion. It's western Riverside County. It's banning to the county line. So it's all the cities shown here. What's importantly is we are one of the handful of COGs in the state that have 2 water districts. Eastern and Western are both full members of WR-COG. And in fact, Ms. Denstead is our vice chair and will be WR-COG's chair next year. And what's unique about this is most COGs have, they're focused around transportation or they're focused around, WR-COG's a very multifaceted COG. We talk about issues related to water, land use planning, transportation, the environment, and having the water districts is important because water is such a critical issue. And there's a tremendous nexus between development, water, population, growth. You can't obviously build houses and have people move into a region if they don't have water. So this is an extension of some work that we did for the Water Task Force, and I've been providing versions of this presentation over the past year to a variety of chambers of commerce, city council meetings. I've now done this presentation for Eastern EMWD's board. I did it for Rancho Cal's board. A couple weeks ago, I went to Elsinore Valley Water District. And so everything I'm sharing with you is public information, which means your staff, if they wanted to, could take all of this data and put it together. We do it for you so you don't have to. But what we're also doing is we have a very wide data set. We have access to a compendium of all the building permits in our region because we oversee a regional traffic impact fee. So I know every building permit for every house in the WR-COG subregion. So we have access to some data. It's all public data, by the way. And so by combining all of this, we have a comprehensive picture that it's really challenging for anyone else to put together. So I always start this presentation by talking about population. There's this vision, and it's right, that Riverside County has been growing, and I've lived here since 2005, and we've had this population growth. This is a 40-year snapshot of how population has grown, and there's this perception that the county has grown as we continue to grow in the future. The problem is that on a year-to-year basis, it's a very different picture. So this graph is year-to-year growth for Riverside County, which is in blue, the SCAG subregion, which is all of Southern California except San Diego. So it's Riverside, San Bernardino, LA, Orange County, Imperial, and Ventura, 18 million people, and then the state of California. So there's two important things to note. One, except for 1 year, we've always grown faster than the state and the larger region. The second year is the population growth trend is going downward. So it used to be that we had growth rates of 4, 5, even 2%. Now we're at 1%. Since the county's population is 2.5 million, 1% a year is 25,000, so it's not insubstantial. But the difference between 1% to 2% is 25 to 50,000. And so what we're seeing is the growth rate in terms of just population has been going down in a decreasing trend as the county gets a little bit larger. And you can see this when you look at the citywide population estimates. So I want to caveat this by saying that these are the state of California's official population estimates as they are available today. The State Department of Finance prepares population estimates for every city and county in California. These population estimates are used for revenue purposes, and any state government program that uses population uses these numbers. Generally speaking, with the exception of Banning, Menifee, and Paris, most of our cities in the WR-COG subregion generally have grown a small amount or losing a small amount of population. I will say that these are estimates because it's not actually possible to count to the day how many people are in a city at a particular time. So what I would say is, did Norco really add 176 people, 175 people? Probably not. Did it add a couple of people? Maybe. Did it lose a couple of people? Maybe. But what's important is most of the cities in your service territory and the larger WR-COG region aren't adding a lot of population. The reason why we are adding population, unlike the rest of the state, is we're having people from other parts of the country and Southern California move here. So a very common pattern is people are leaving LA County, Orange County, and San Diego County to move here, and they're coming for a variety of reasons. What's interesting is when people leave, and people do leave, so right now we have more people coming in than leaving, but when they leave, they're always going to places that are less expensive. So they might be going to Kern County, San Luis Obispo, that's a popular destination, Phoenix, Las Vegas, and other parts. generally speaking, when somebody leaves Riverside County, and I think we all know someone anecdotally, or have friends, family members who've left, generally they're going to a place where it's a little bit cheaper to buy a house, a little bit cheaper to live. When you look at LA County, we are one of their top destinations. So when somebody leaves LA County, they generally go to 3 places: Riverside, San Bernardino, or Las Vegas. When somebody leaves Orange County, they go to one of 3 places. They're going to Riverside, San Bernardino, and Maricopa County, Phoenix, and Arizona. And when someone leaves San Diego, they're going to Riverside or Maricopa County in Arizona as well. So what I want to share with you is, for all the people moving into the county, which is really what's driving our population growth, where do they come from? Well, you can break it down roughly a third. A third of them are coming from all 49 states in the United States. A third of them are coming from all the other counties in California outside of LA, Orange, San Diego County. And then a third of them are coming from LA, Orange, and San Diego County. And that's important. I'll talk about that later on in terms of what some other regional trends we're seeing. The main driver of this is people are having less kids. People started having less kids in 2008. And what we're finding is the 2008 Great Recession, or however you want to call it, had 2 very significant long-lasting effects. One, it completely changed the housing market and the rate at which homes are produced, which we're now feeling in terms of housing affordability. And second, it has caused a long-term, sustained, and even worldwide drop in birth rates. And so our county's birth rates actually started going down in 2008, but the decrease has accelerated over the past several years. And we all thought there'd be a little mini baby boom with COVID. Doesn't appear so. And this rate keeps on going down. While our rate is still higher than the state and Southern California, it's still been going down. And so here's just a statistic. So there's a number the UN uses called replacement rate. Every woman needs to have 2.1 children for the population to be stable. So if you've had your 2.1 children, you're doing a great job. So right now, the US is at 1.8. During the boomer period, we were at 3.5. So we were growing. The problem is most of the world is below us. And most of the developed world is far below us. So of the roughly 150, 180 territories and countries the UN tracks, 2/3 of them have birth rates below the replacement level. The only continent where there's significant population growth is Africa. But especially in the developed world, as cost of living has gone up, as people's standards of living have gone up, they're having fewer and fewer children. This is particularly bad in many parts of Asia. South Korea's birth rate is roughly half of ours, and that's after the government spent $200 billion to get people to have more children, and it's not actually working. What that's causing us to do is for us to grow older. Now, our county has been and is likely to continue to be younger than the rest of the state, but we're seeing significant changes in the percentage of each city's population that's over the age of 65. Within our subregion, we had 3 cities that got a little bit younger. That's Banning, Calimesa, and Menifee, and that's because they had a very, I don't want to offend them, older demographic, and they had a lot of younger families moving in. So if you extend this out, what's going to happen is we're going to have fewer families, fewer people with children, people living longer. So essentially, we're going to have an older population than we do now. So just to kind of recap, as we look out 10, 20 years in the future, more households are going to be people with 65 and older. We're also seeing an increase in people living by themselves. Currently in the county, 25% of all households are a single-person household. Ms. Denstead? Interesting enough, half of those are seniors living alone. So we have 75,000 seniors in our county living alone in a dwelling unit by themselves. At the same time, we're seeing a lot more high occupancy households, multi-generational living. What essentially is happening is households have enough people to pay the rent or mortgage. If they can do that with 1 or 2 people, great. If they need to add a roommate or a family member, great. So you might have, for example, on my street, it's me, my wife, and my daughter, and a dog. But that's 3 humans. Lady next to us, Lady next to us she lives by herself. And then the woman to the right of us has 4 people in the house. It's her and her 3 children, who, by the way, apparently have jobs and get paid really well because they drive nicer cars than I do, and they don't help their mom with the yard work. So, but boo. But when I look around my neighborhood, there's a huge diversity. There's a handful of people that have young children, but more and more it's older adults, usually couples, 2 people living together, but I'm starting to see a lot more older kids living with their parents. And so that's what's driving. We're seeing this diversity. So from a water perspective, it's important to note that the diverse households aren't necessarily going to use the water the same way. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit later. So here's what's going to happen. And so let's talk about water specifically. So we're going to continue to see more units. So we hadn't built enough units. Previously, the number of units are going to increase. But that doesn't mean the population is going to stay the same. And so you're going to have more one-person households, more older households. What you're really going to do is have something called aging in place. Aging in place is when someone moves into a house, maybe they're 30 or they're 40s, and they stay there for 40 years. So it's becoming so difficult to move up or move from one house to another. People are just staying there. And then over time, you accumulate stuff, junk, some people might call it, and you just can't move out of your house. And so it's easier just to stay in the house, then the house is paid off, and then why should you move? And then you're 85 years old living in a single-family house, and then you have to move in with your kids. That actually happened to me with my parents. They live with my brother. So I want to give you just a couple really simple examples. You could have 3 houses that are exactly the same, physically the same. It's a 2,500 square foot single family home. You could have 3 households that have the same number of people, but they are very different. You could have a younger couple with no kids. Let's say they're 35 years old. Another couple, 55 years old. Another couple that's retired, 75. They could use water very differently. They could use water the same. I don't actually know. I can tell you as a former transportation consultant, my profession has been studying things like this for decades. And the reason we know these characteristics are important because we've been tracking people for 20 years and actually longer. So traffic engineers have been giving people GPS trackers so they know exactly how many trips they take. They know what their income is, the number of people in the household. And so my question for you, and I think for the water professionals, is it may be necessary for you to take a really deep dive into how demographic characteristics at the actual household level. I've talked to some people in the water industry, and they're like, oh yeah, we look at the census, and it may be necessary to take a much deeper dive into that because you could end up with usage characteristics that are very different with exactly the same number of people, exactly the same household. And you could even see the water use change over time with this aging in place. So this could be exactly the same household. They move in at 35, they use water a certain way, they get older, their water use changes, and then as they age, their water use changes again. So I'm going to turn a little bit from population to housing production. So on a regional basis, for the past 8 to 9 years, we've averaged about 5,000 total residential permits in the WCOG region. This is the entire WCOG region, unincorporated county, 18 cities, everything. So the number goes up a little bit, down a little bit. We had, I think, 7,000. We got close to 7,000 last year, but it's a pretty stable number. So what appears to us is there's actually a cap. And so what the home builders are doing, because by the way, the large home builders, the Lennars, Tri-Points, D.R. Hortons, they dominate the home builder market. They're building no more homes than they know they can sell. And so there's no incentive for them to overbuild because many of them went through the recession of 2008 and saw the damage that's done. And now you even have builders who are providing their own financing. If you want a relatively low mortgage rate, you can get a lower mortgage from many builders than you can from a bank. So one of the things I wanted to share with you is I attend, in terms of my job at WCOG, a number of states of the cities. And I hear everyone say, we're the fastest growing city in Riverside County or the fastest growing city in the state. And I thought, there has to be a way to figure out on an apples-to-apples basis. So I found an article in the LA Times where they talked about new units per 1,000 population. And the reason why that matters is, let's say you have a city of 3 million people, like City of LA. They might build 25,000 units in a year. That's a lot, right? Well, what if the city of Temecula at 1/30th of their size builds 1,000 units? Who's building faster? So what I can tell you is some of our fastest growing areas that are in your service area are Temecula and Wildomar. There's a huge amount of growth going on in Temecula and Wildomar, particularly in multifamily. There's some in Murrieta. Where growth appears to have slowed and is more what I call slow and steady growth are the larger, older cities such as Corona, Riverside. Jurupa Valley right now isn't building as many houses for their size as some other locations. But what's important to note is, from in terms of like a percentage of growth, when you look at your service area, it's really the northern side is probably more of the slow and steady growth, whereas as you move south, there's going to be more of this, I'd say, higher intensity, larger scale growth in terms of percentage of unit growth. So I want to talk, when we talk about housing, one of the issues everyone likes to talk about is, why is housing so expensive? So WRCOG since 2016 has done a study that's done by an economist on how much housing costs in the WRCOG subregion to actually build and how much impact fees contribute to that. So I'll cut to the chase. Sewer and water fees across our region represent on average 3% of the total cost of the house. So if you look at this chart, it's the blue slice, which means you as water agencies control the blue slice. All the other slices you don't control. And so here's something I want to share with you. So this is a prototype house that is going to sell for $600,000. It's going to be about 2,500 square feet. It's going to cost the builder $120 a square foot to build that house. That's not land. That's just like sticks, wood, screws, labor, concrete, steel, that. So that house is now $300,000. Nothing else has happened. You can't actually live in the house yet. Oh, and then they have to buy the land, and so now you're up to 70%. So now you're at 70%, you own the land, and you own the house. Well, this is America, so we want people to make money off their transactions, so let's add another 10% for the builders. And that's typical builder profit. So Lennar, one of our biggest home builders last year, had $34.2 billion in revenue nationwide. They had $3.4 billion in profit. So across the home building industry, 10% is pretty standard. And so then it obviously costs money to other soft costs, so it's designing the house, going through the entitlement process, all the other work needed to support the project. And then the fees, this is everyone's fees, are less than 10%. It's your fees, it's TUMP fees, it's MSACP fees, it's the city fee. And so this is not the reason why people can't buy houses. We can't buy houses because we're not building enough. And we're not building enough because the people who are building the houses want to make sure they make money, and they're controlling the supply, and there's very little a local government, a city or county can do to get them to build more houses. There's absolutely nothing you as a water district can do to get them to build more houses. So I wanted to share this with you. And by the way, we've been doing this study for 8 years. The complete study is on our website, because I know that this has been coming up more and more, that it's water fees or city fees or other fees. That's why people aren't building houses. That's why people can't afford the homes. And it's just simply not true. So let's take it one step further. We, at WRCOG, as I said, we also look at all the other fees, and then we have recently been looking at how much housing production is there versus how much the actual fees are. And so we have a handful of our cities. Most of them are the average is about $50,000. We have a handful of them that are a little bit higher. So for example, Wildomar, their fees are over $80,000 per house. Some of those are water fees because it's in the Elsinore Valley Water District, but the city has a very large city fee. They built last year, 300 single-family units. They built as many as Temecula. Temecula fees are $20,000 lower. Is $20,000 going to stop a builder from building a $600,000 or $700,000 house? Probably not. And so when we look across the region, there's many other factors that are affecting. So for example, Menifee has built more homes than many of our other cities combined. And that's because that's where people right now, given that many of those people living in Menifee might be going to Temecula, Murrieta, or San Diego, people want to be there. It's not the fees. So builders aren't finding places like, oh, I'm going to build this house because of the cheapest fees. I'm going to build this house because it's going to sell. And so we can't find necessarily any confluence between how much fees are charged versus how many homes are built, because there's so many other factors affecting how many homes are built, because every home that's built is also sold. So that's the other thing to keep in mind. Now, I want to share with you something that we did. This actually came from Eastern, but it's specifically germane to you. And so the question Eastern asked us was, how much growth there is in the larger Southern California region if we take Western Riverside County outside of the mix. And so what we did was we pulled the biggest 10 cities in the metropolitan service area. We looked at how many units they built and what's the population growth and what trends that we saw. Generally speaking, there's a lot of development going on outside of Western Riverside County. City of LA, for example, this is from 2021 to 2024, 75,000 units of all type. Some single family, some multifamily, some ADUs. But the state says they lost about 60,000 people during that same time. One of the handful of cities that has a very similar growth pattern to us is Irvine. And that's because Irvine has a large development, the Great Park, where Lennar is building, and they're building a lot of single family homes. Parenthetically, I would add, those homes are selling at a minimum of $2 million each. So if those of you think a single family, a $600,000, $700,000, $800,000 home in Western Riverside County is expensive, I encourage you to look at the homes for sale in Chula Vista or Los Angeles or Irvine or some of these other locations. But here's the message. Our perspective is we have the same number of people or even less, and we're just moving them around. Since our population growth is driven by people moving outside of those counties, we're not really gaining people as a subregion, we're just moving them around. So much of our growth aren't, quote, new people, they're transplants. So from a water perspective at a regional level, I think it's important to have this discussion in terms of, are they, quote, new people? Are they people that are already here? Are they using water in one region and then using the same amount of water, using different water? And the other thing, this goes back to my earlier point, is what's really driving water? Is it people? Is it houses? Is two people in one house use more water than two people in one house, or a smaller house or a different house? So this also is important to think about what really is driving water demand. So to sum everything up, just want to give you some takeaways. Your service area is growing. They're building new units. There's development throughout your service area. It's growing, right now it's growing a little bit faster in the southern part, a little slower in the north. I would say this, I would not take any city's, quote, build-out projections without some degree of scrutiny or some degree of skepticism. Some of our cities have a build-out projection which is, let's just say, very ambitious, which they will not meet in this decade or this century or in my lifetime or probably my daughter's lifetime at the current rate. And so what's happening is what they're doing is saying, well, our general plan says we're going to add, our population is going to be 150,000 and we're going to add, 50,000 units even though we're only building 100 units a year. So that's something to think about. Additionally, we're adding people but not adding population, and we expect that trend to continue. Also, unless something substantially changes, we don't see people stop coming here from LA, Orange, and San Diego County. They're very expensive places to live. I've talked to a number of people who've relocated, and they're leaving because it's expensive to live. They don't necessarily feel safe. There are other quality of life issues, and they're coming here not necessarily because it's less expensive, but also they have a positive quality of life. And then the bottom line is, our growth and development patterns in the future could be very different from today. The next 5 years is probably going to be just like it is today. 10 years could be different. Because if we think back to what things were like in 2015, today's a lot different than that. So in 2035, 2040, the growth in your service area could be very different from it is today. And so with that, here's my contact information. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Great, thank you very much. Director Dennstead.
I have, Chris, thank you for being here today. This fascinating data, fascinating. It really is. We've had interest at the caucus meeting, obviously, to get this presentation for MET, for the Inland Empire Orange County Caucus, to talk about exactly what that is. Are we just seeing a transplant population coming from some of these other counties, right? And so a couple of questions. You know, and I'm focusing more on the Marietta end, right? Because I'm
Yeah.
driving around town and there's tremendous amount of building going on, a lot of apartments going on, a lot of condos, a lot of different things going on. So how delayed is the data?
So we count based on our TUMP fees. And so what will happen is anything that's under construction now may or may not have paid their fees. And so this is also what was in place as of the end of last fiscal year. So anything that's under construction now may or may not have paid their
Okay.
fees already. I will just say in general, Wildemar, Menifee, Murrieta, and Temecula are both hotspots for apartment development. And if you go back the past 2 or 3 years, they have built, there's as many new apartments in the I-15 corridor, so Wildemar, Murrieta, Temecula, than the rest of Western Riverside County. And so what we sometimes see ebbs and flows between different cities, but yeah, so if we redo this presentation in July of 2025, we'll likely see a lot more permits in city of Menifee, city of Murrieta.
Okay. And, you know, another component of this too that we need to take into consideration and take a look at is the fact of not only is there a housing boom, but there's a commercial boom too, right? And so some commercial uses obviously a lot more water than others. Some uses hardly any, right? And they've got restrooms or something on the facilities that they're using for a bathroom or sanitation, whatever, and maybe some landscaping outside, which is going to change. So I'd be curious to see what that footprint looks like as well.
Sure.
And how much that has been calculated into the fact.
Sure. So I can tell you this. Right now, 97% of our TUMP fees come from one of 3 uses: single-family homes, multifamily homes, and warehouses. We're seeing very little new retail construction. The retail construction we're seeing is generally one of 2 things: a small restaurant. So we're seeing new fast food, In-N-Outs, Chick-fil-A's, those kinds. We're seeing a number of those new ones. We're also seeing some really big projects, Costco's, Target's. So I have to go back to the office and talk to Target because they want to pay their fees on a project, and it's $1 million. So I'm going to be calling them today.
Fabulous. You have fun with that.
Actually, they're more than happy. They just want to figure out how to pay. So I love that call. But what seems to also be happening is we see a lot of reuse of existing sites. And particularly, so for example, in Jurupa Valley, there was I believe an old Kmart building that they basically gutted on the inside, completely redid it. So it was a building that at one time was occupied, then became vacant, and then became used again. So I think from a water perspective, one of the things to think about is you could see no change in square footage, but change in usage. So as vacant buildings become reused, they will potentially generate more water. And the type of water they're using could be very different. I will say this: we're seeing no office development, and we don't think there's going to be any new office development. So any of the commercial is very likely to be these retail uses. And I will say this: there will be pockets. So the city of Murrieta is trying to develop a large retail center. There's possibly going to be pockets or projects, but across the region, we're not seeing as much office and retail. The one exception is There is a building boom for hospitals and medical office buildings. So if you've been by Wildemar, they have a large Kaiser facility that they have built. There's an 8-story medical facility. I forget the name of it. It was at their State of the City last week. That's going to be opening. So,
Yeah, Rancho Springs,
and so I would say that's another dimension too.
yeah. And Loma Linda over on the 215, and Kaiser is still going to expand their campus over there. Their plans to go
Right.
out to build for 2028, I think it is. You know, and then the other thing you talked about on your slides was the fact you looked at the 3 different households with the same square footage, the younger, the middle-aged, and the older couples. I'd be curious to know, because a lot of what we look at, and Tim is going to be all excited that I brought this up, was the landscaping outside, right? And, you know, the outdoor water usage, are they all within the same lot size? Because that is a consideration as
Right.
well. And new build with new planting material is going to take more water than an established, and later on, planting material that won't take as much water, right? Tim? There we go. So,
Yeah, and so I will tell you this. I can also see people's desire for landscaping changing over time.
right,
You move into a house when you're 35, you have all these great ambitious ideas for landscaping, and then you get a job, and you're like, I don't want to do this anymore. Then you hire someone to do it, and then you're like, this is a waste of time, and then you put in artificial turf, xeriscaping.
Right.
Because my wife and I are having that discussion right now.
and
We're
put in
like,
lots of pavers.
and I can see my neighbors. And what's interesting is sometimes it seems to be, or maybe it's the older ones that are doing this. So my point is that you could see in the same household a very different water use pattern over time in exactly the same house, and that could be a reason, as they just choose or for various incentives happen to change their landscaping.
Yeah, no, for sure. But this is really fascinating data. I really thank you for coming to do this. I look forward to having the discussion at the caucus meeting with all this data presentation. And, you know, quite honestly, this is something that probably needs to be seen at Metropolitan so that we can have a discussion about the 6 counties and what that actually means, right? So that we can get our colleagues, my colleagues up at Met, to focus on what's going on out here at Riverside County, because obviously we've helped develop Orange County system, San Diego system, LA system, and now it's our turn to do it out here because of all of this and that's going on. And everybody is coming out here. So, you know, I think it'd be a really helpful planning tool to take a look at all this, because this is really fascinating data to look at.
And I just want to emphasize, this isn't our data, this is the state's data. So the State Department of Housing and Community Development has an annual report on how many units are built for every city and county in California. This is not top secret, super secret scroll stuff. Anyone can access, it's a public website. So if you want to see how many units Riverside or LA or Irvine or Harupa Valley or Corona built, there's a website you can go to, and they break it down by type of unit, everything. So this is not
No.
requires special expertise to access.
I appreciate that, but the state doesn't have Chris Gray, we do.
Right.
So, so we're gonna take Chris's, you know, your take on this, your little nerdiness that you're diving into, and doing these number crunches, because I know you love this for TUMF, and
I do.
you go into great detail, and it's really fascinating. So thank you for this presentation, and I really appreciate this, and I'm looking forward to the discussion on the bigger water scale of what we're looking at as, and having this being a part of our planning consideration as we move forward. So those are my questions, Mr.
Thank you.
President.
Director Rizzi, I know that you need to leave shortly. Do you have questions or comments?
I'm okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Director Torres.
Yes, I just have one quick question. I want to say thank you. This was amazing. I usually, when we get presentations, I go to the last page to see how many pages we're going to go through, and it went by way faster than I expected, so thank
Absolutely.
you. I was looking at this graph, page 25, and the new units per thousand, and I wanted to know how much is it taken into account space, right? I mean, I see Banning
Sure.
has hella space, excuse my language.
Yeah, I
Um,
mean, it's not a perfect measure. I mean, obviously, certain cities have more room to develop than others.
Okay.
But what I would opine is, none of our cities are built out. In that, if, in the case of Riverside, we're now seeing development applications for people who want to take existing commercial centers and build multifamily. There are still areas to build single-family in Riverside. So I think there's a perception that some of our cities are built out, and they're really not.
Do the warehouses make that more complicated?
Somewhat. However, I mean, I had thought single-family construction in Riverside was slowing down, and then a builder just submitted a request for 100 permits last week in the city of Riverside. And those things happen. In Corona, for example, when we think that city's built out, no, the Cahalco project, the Bedford project on Corona is going to build 15, they're in the process of building 1,500 units, off Cahalco Road. There's large areas of Rupa Valley that can be built. So all of our cities have space for development.
That's good to know. Well, thank you. Thank
You're
you for
welcome.
your time.
Director Roten? Okay, just a couple. First, again, thank you, Chris. This is very helpful. An observation, you mentioned that almost every jurisdiction's long-term plans or general plan, their projections are for more units than will actually get built. And in my mind, that is largely driven by unrealistic state mandates that if you don't put in your general plan X number of new dwelling units, we will do bad things to you.
Right.
And I don't see that changing anytime soon. So I think that's largely where that dichotomy comes from. The other, on the water side, in the residential sector, most of the water use in the residential sector is outside the house or apartment, not inside. Most of the available conservation measures that are still cost-effective and something that we can plan on getting and work toward getting are also outside. But a larger percentage of new construction is either single-family or on much smaller lots than what I live on, or probably you live on. And so I think per unit, outdoor water usage is going to go down, not just because of conservation, but because the lot size and the
Yeah.
planted area is smaller per capita.
To go back to the traffic analogy, one thing I'll share with you is not only have we been studying people's travel patterns, we've been studying the effect of different strategies on reducing people's travel. And so, for example, there's 20 years of study that says if you give somebody a transit pass, it cuts their number of times they take a car trip by X number of percents. So I would defer to my colleagues up on the dais and in the audience, but I would wonder if there would be benefit to if you have that detailed data to say, hey, if you switch to this, you will get X amount of reduction. The other issue I would add is, and this is something that's happened with the Air District. The Air District has realized that there's so much existing development out there that it's difficult for the region to reach its air quality goals because it's much easier to regulate the new than the existing. And to keep in mind that even with all the development we're doing, we're increasing the number of dwelling units by 1% or less a year, which means 99% of the housing stock. So what that also argues for is having strategies that address both the new and the existing housing stock, and also being able to document and quantify and show with good empirical data how effective those various strategies are at the household level. Now, over time, over 30 plus years, We'll get a lot more units, and you're absolutely right. The newer homes are a lot more water efficient, much smaller lots, much less outdoor watering, and as the state regulations become more and more restrictive, however you want to call it, I see that happening. But when I drive around my neighborhood, so Sycamore Creek was started building in 2003, and they're still building houses. There's a lot of green space in my neighborhood. There's a lot of people with yards, and there's a lot of people who are watering those yards every day. So,
Yeah, whether they need it or not.
yes. Well, to that point, our HOA sent out notices that if we don't start watering our lawns again, they'll start fining us.
Yeah.
And so there's that issue as well.
Great. Any questions or comments from staff?
No, thank you, Chris. It's great data. It's not a surprise to us. We've been thinking about this quite a bit. You know, our challenge is always the long-term planning. And you were very, very articulate in the way that you described how it is always going to be changing. We just know it's going to change. So our challenge up at Metropolitan is we have to plan a water system for 2050 and beyond. So what's everyone's crystal ball say? And at Met, yeah, the pieces on the chessboard are moving around within the Met service area. But right now, they're not really growing, but that doesn't mean in 20 years, there's not going to be a major shift in that.
Absolutely.
And it takes us so long to build projects that, you know, we really can't afford to wait for that outcome to start. And that's always our biggest struggle. So it's great to have this information. We really pay attention to it. And we're actually using this in our discussions up at Metropolitan. So it's very helpful, so I appreciate your effort.
And I just want to thank you all for I really enjoy giving these presentations. I've given a number of them, but we really value our partnership with Western. We could not do all the things WCOG does without having agencies like Western be a part of us, and I'm very thankful that the leadership at WCOG made that decision to have water agencies, because it just adds to the discussion, because you can't talk about development and population without having water be an integral part of that. So
Great.
thank you.
Thank you very much, Chris.
Thank you.
Go get $1 million from Target. Okay. Brings us to consent calendar. Does anybody wish to pull anything? And if not, is there a
Move
motion?
consent?
Second.
Okay. Tammy, when the system is ready, if you would do a roll call vote, please.
Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dinstead?
Aye.
Director Roten?
Yes.
Director Risby? President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 5-0.
Okay, thank you. Brings us to items to be added to the agenda. Have we anything?
Nothing to add today?
Okay, thank you. Our action items, we have two. The first is to consider authorizing a professional services contract with East Source Companies for regional water loss technical support. It says here that Ms. Adams is going to talk to us.
Good morning. Thank you, President Gardner and the board. Michelle Adams, I am your Customer Experience Manager here at Western Water. You guys get the privilege of hearing from me for the next two items. I think you guys are going to love hearing what I have to say. It's all about bringing dollars back to our customers in a variety of different ways as a regional leader here in Riverside County. So the item in front of you is to authorize a professional services contract for regional water loss technical support services. So as you just heard, we have some new stringent regulations coming down from the state. So as part of the urban water use objective within the Making Conservation a Way of Life framework, there is an independent regulation governing water loss. This is the leaks that are coming out of our pipes and various other water loss that is unbilled water loss. So it's a dollar risk to every agency that has to deal with it. Compliance with this independent regulation is required by 2028 and is required on an annual basis by all of our agencies, including Western Water. This is a huge regional leadership step for Western. We've been looking outside of our agency, outside of our region, to see how some of the bigger wholesalers across the region are supporting their retail agencies in this water loss effort. So knowing that it's going to be a regulatory component, it's an independent regulation that every single water agency has to meet, we want to make sure that we're providing our customers the best. So we look at other agencies, and then we come back and we do it a little bit better because I have a little bit of a competitive side. So we do that through facilitated regional planning. So every month we meet with our retail agencies on the water use efficiency side and on the water loss side to understand how they feel about their achievements with the new standards. We talk to them about where their districts are in the planning. We talk about what technical assistance and skill sets they have in-house. We look at Western as a retail agency to understand where our gaps are. We then look at how we can procure those needed technical services. So based on what the agencies say that they need, we want to go out and understand if Western doesn't have that skill set in-house to provide to 8 to 12 other agencies, how are we making sure that our agencies have access to those services? And then we work with each independent agency one-on-one to help develop assessments and compliance plans. So when we determined those regional needs, we hosted those water loss control group meetings, we conducted those one-on-one compliance assessments, we developed individualized agency action plans, and then through this regional collaboration, we're actually able to lower the overall cost of these services because of the economies of scale that we're bringing to the vendor. So with that, we're focusing in 4 areas for Western Water and our retail agencies: program development and technical assistance, water audit reporting and support, reviewing activities that contribute to this non-revenue water loss, and then the water loss standard assistance. I'm going to hit on that non-revenue part a couple times throughout this presentation because it's really critical that over time we start mitigating the risk to the pocketbooks of Western Water and our retail agencies. So as we lose that water, it's unbilled. It's not coming back to us, which means it's a risk for our ratepayers as well. So when we talk about economies of scale and cost sharing, we went back to the books. I like to get creative in how we can help people. I like helping people. I like making sure that people have access and it's equitable. And so we looked at all of our agencies, and if you look at the bottom line, we were looking at expenses of about $492,000. That is huge for one agency to swallow, right? So we looked at the cost of service. We went to Metropolitan and said, hey, we have member agency administered funds through your program. How can we use this funding to provide water loss support services to our agencies? They came back with an offer. We took it. We're also looking at using our Western Water regional funding. So every year through the biennial budget process, we actually allocate a good chunk of money to programming specific to our retail agencies. And it's really to be used for water use efficiency activities, conservation programming, operational conservation programming, and water loss falls within that category. So what you're seeing here is a variety of funding sources being used to really draw down on that $492,000 price tag to where the retail agency funding in that far right column is all that retail agency is going to be paying. Okay. So when you look at the cost of services that you're having, we're actually able to cut their costs in half, if not more. And again, a $492,000 investment to mitigate up to $9 million of lost revenue risk is a huge opportunity. So next steps, through this professional services agreement, we will be working with eSource companies to finalize the service plans for all of our agencies. One of the things we did is we brought to them kind of an a la carte menu of services, and we said, what services would you like? What services does your organization need? How can Western Water help you fill the skill set gaps? And we identified those up front. With the approval of this item, we would be going back to those agencies to finalize those service plans and make sure that our numbers are fully vetted and ready to go. This is a not to exceed contract, so that $492,000 price tag is as much as we would spend. We would continue regional work group meetings. So being able to have those ongoing work group meetings is really critical because it gives us the opportunity to kind of evaluate and re-engage with our retail agencies. Is it working? Is what we're providing you useful? Are there things that we need to be doing with the vendor to enhance your services? It goes back to the wholesale customer experience. We also want to facilitate water loss standard education and compliance support. So very similar to what Chris Gray was talking about is everything is a transplant across the region, right? So we really want to make sure that as we're educating the various agencies, as we're educating various staff, we see that on the human resources side as well as we have educators coming from Rancho. We are giving to Elsinore, like we recycle our people. And so if we can really get that education and that compliance support sticking for every single retail agency, it really helps out the entire region. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have about this item.
Does anyone have questions?
I just have a quick question to make sure that I understand.
Yes.
So, you can hear me? Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, so what's coming out of our pocket is that third column, the Western Regional Funding.
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
That's it. Thank you. Thank you, Michelle. Very, very awesome program.
Welcome. Thank you.
Other questions?
Quick question. So our contract is going to be with eSource, and eSource is then going to coordinate with all of our partners?
Correct.
Okay. And what is the timeline for this?
So, assuming approval by the board, we would be immediately engaging in a professional services contract with eSource. We've been working under a different contract with eSource to get all of these compliance plans together and make sure that we have all of our ducks in a row. So as soon as that contract is executed, we are able to then finalize those service plans, and eSource is within 24 hours ready to jump in and help the agencies. So we've been having ongoing conversations.
Okay, so how long, though, is the program going to last?
So this is a one-year program for this specific contract. So this would be on a annual basis. And again, this brings them into audit compliance. It gives them the tools. And then we go back and we do another assessment to see, okay, what do you guys need in year two? Where are the skill sets gaps for year two? Do we still need to work on certain pieces of the service
Okay.
menu?
Is eSource here today?
Yes, we actually have Bill Christensen with eSource Companies.
He's on
He's
Zoom.
on
Good
Zoom.
morning.
Sorry.
Good
I'm on
morning.
Zoom. Yeah, good morning, everyone.
Good morning. How are you today?
Good. Thank you for
Great.
having me today.
My quick question for you is, obviously, this is going to be a very interesting project and something that we really want to make sure that we're successful at. And my question for you is, with all of the member agencies that we have, are you going to be able to give them all equal time and attention as needed?
Yes, absolutely. And we have already met with several of them and interacted, and we've got capacity to carry out all the tasks that have been proposed.
Okay, and in budget, right? Because we like that.
Yes,
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. I appreciate you being here today.
absolutely. Thank you for having me.
That is all my questions, Mr. President, and I'm happy to move approval on this item.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Director Roten, did you have questions or comments? Okay, then Tammy, when you are ready, if you would do a roll call.
Director Torres?
Yes.
Director Dinstedt?
Aye?
Director Roten?
Yes.
President Gardner?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 4-0.
Great, thank you very much. Don't go away, Michelle.
Oh, I won't. You
All
have
right.
me for at least
All right.
another 5 to
Yeah.
10 minutes.
Our next item is to
it
consider
five.
approving an increase in funding for retail customer rebate programs.
Fantastic. So we just talked about how we're helping some of our wholesale customers and regional partners. So I kind of want to bring it back to the people who turn their tap and they get their water from Western. So one of the things that we'll be considering today is increasing funding for our ongoing retail customer rebate programs. So customer support looks a little different here at Western. We do a lot of amazing things on the customer support side, and it's going to change after the state regulations go into place. I will say we have some pretty phenomenal programs already in place that are helping us be prepared for the new state regulations that are coming in, but I wanted to share with you some of those things that we're currently doing. So we have free site audits. Those are our on-site landscape efficiency audits where customers can learn if they have a leak, learn how to program their irrigation system. We do our indoor-outdoor device rebates, turf replacement rebates. We have our H2O Depot online store. And then we recently released our leak notification program and our water use portal. So with the new state regulations on turf, Assembly Bill 1572 went into effect, which prohibits watering non-functional turf with potable water. That's our drinking water. So by 2027, public agencies are going to be required to adhere to this new regulation. This is really critical because we have a number of public agencies out there with a lot of non-functional turf. And so when we talk non-functional turf, we're talking non-recreational, ornamental, decorative, you only walk on it to mow it. We want to make sure that we're educating people on what that is and helping them to bring it out. So with the new state regulations on landscaping that's coming under the new urban water use objective, the outdoor regulation is also going to shift. So it's reducing the landscape efficiency factor, which is basically what tells us how much water does the plant need based on the environment that that plant is living in. And so it's very service area specific. We here at Western are very fortunate. We have a guru on the dais that was able to create an individualized water budget, and we look at a million different factors that give our customers a very individualized water budget when it comes to their outdoor budget. It's very nice because on their billing statement, it shows exactly the amount that they use based on the weather that is out there. The state is recommending that by 2024, that we are currently at 0.8 as our landscape efficiency factor. As we go from 28 to 2035, you're gonna see that drop from 0.8 to 0.63. The challenge with this is that the crop curve changes, the weather changes, and they're giving you a specific number, not even knowing what is the weather gonna be like in 2035. So one of the things we want to do is really beef up our programming to make sure that we're being proactive in those turf transformations. We want to make sure we're out there advocating for our customers, our commercial customers, our retail customers, making sure that they have the resources and the tools and the expertise to do what they need to do to transform those turfs. So this slide basically shows you how we have trended with turf replacements over the last, say, 2 to 3 to 4 years. So we have estimated water savings of about 18.5 million gallons over the last 2 years. That's huge. We want to do better because I'm competitive and I always want to outdo myself. So in 2024 to 2025, we've beefed up our program. We've done a lot more proactive outreach with our businesses, with our HOAs to understand what are the impacts of their turf. How can we start saving water? So currently reserved, we have nearly 1.7 million square feet of transformed turf that we can work on this year. So this is a maximum customer rebate of about $462,000, and over the next 10 years will save us about 148 million gallons of water. This is huge, especially when you look at some of the big properties that we have here in Riverside. So you've got Westmont Village, you've got, as an HOA, we've got Lake Hills HOA. We have a number of HOAs. They fall into that public, or not the public agency category, but the commercial category. And so when we look at our own Bergamot Pump Station, we are a public agency. We are watering that parcel with potable water. We have to do something about that by 2027. If there's anything I've learned in the last couple of years, it's that these projects do not happen overnight. There's partnerships and permitting and landscape designs and construction and demolition, and we have residential neighbors that we have to be cognizant of while we're doing all of that. So we definitely want to be mindful of the timeline too, which is why you're seeing this come to you early.
Can I ask you, what does currently reserved mean?
So basically, those are the applications that have already come through SoCal WaterSmart for residents and businesses that are saying, I have a project, I want to do it, here's my plan for doing it. So these are reserved projects that have a plan and a timeline to them to be completed within the next year. So recently, we celebrated the Murrieta Public Library. We are partnering with public agencies, of course. So the city of Murrieta just installed a pollinator garden within their public library space. We removed 5,235 square feet of non-functional turf, creating an attractive and community engaging space. One of the things we want to do with public agencies is really highlight those visible spaces that are actually publicly accessible. So there are some public agencies that don't allow free access to their buildings, but we really want to partner with those where people can come in, they can see the plants, they can see the interpretive signage, they can see how beautiful WaterWise landscape can be. So with this, I just want to share a quick social video. Thanks to our Stratcom team and Director Dunstedt was there on the day of the event. We were able to pull this video together to highlight the event. Perfect, thank you. So this project itself will save 462,175 gallons over the lifetime of the project, which is huge in that space. Oh. So we gotta watch it again, it's kind of cool. So the program funding allocation, the request that we have in front of you today is for additional funding of $338,000. 50 of that would be going towards that turf transformation program to serve 2 additional customers. We'd be looking at putting about $150,000 towards the commercial turf replacement, which will be for commercial and public agency, $120,000 for residential turf replacement, and then $18,000 for those weather-based irrigation controllers. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Does anyone have questions? And if not, is there a motion?
I have.
Okay.
Thank you. I didn't know that I was going to be in this little video thing, so. And one of the really cool things that they did at this for handing out little pieces was seeds that they put in little glass vials that were labeled what flowers they were going to do. So I thought that was really, really cool, and they gave you a little satchel bath that you could put it in, and so I took some, and I'll be planting those and seeing what happens, so it'll be very entertaining. My question is, and this is probably more for the CFO than it is for you, on the money side of it, do we have sufficient monies to be able to cover this, and is this going to be a need on an ongoing basis, Mr. CFO?
Well, we definitely have the money to cover it. That was covered even before it arrived at the ComGov committee meeting. As far as ongoing,
So ongoing, yes. So one of the things we do when we do the biennial budget cycle is we try to analyze what we've done in the past budget cycles. And so this year we budgeted off of what we did a couple of years ago, and we added a little bit. What we underestimated was the public really wanting to participate, which is a good problem to have, right? And so next year when we go, or in 2 years when we go back to the biennial budget cycle, we'll look at, okay, what did we do this year? And then bring that to the biennial budget cycle process.
I'd like Tim to weigh in, because this is really important in the concept of the project and where the revenue comes from.
Yes.
Okay.
So the source of the funding for this is the rate structure, the retail rate structure. In tiers 3 and 4, there is a conservation charge. In addition, the cost of service statements talk about these programs, that we will provide these programs, what these programs cost us per year. And so we adjust the board approved the funds and the rate in tiers 3 and 4 to support these programs specifically. So even if it is ongoing, there is funding available to run these programs.
Okay, no, and that's important to know. And then I'm going to go back to something that Chris Gray said in his presentation, which I kind of caught on to, and it was really a fascinating thing. And perhaps this is something that we can talk about at a different meeting and agendize it for a discussion, because I know I miss the ConGov meetings now, and I don't get to have the input now because I'm up at Met on a committee day. But something he said was to show people what the change could mean to them. And so if we were to actually go out and do some type of, a video or presentation or some kind of information on our website that shows if you remove 1,000 square feet of turf grass and replace it with this, what that does to your budget, just certain things like that. So maybe we could talk about the communication piece, because I'm not, this is obviously the funding piece of it, but the communication piece, because I think it's really important. people want to do the right thing, they just don't know how to do the right thing. They don't know what's going to be effective and where they're going to get the most bang for their buck, right? Because we're not here to financially stress people over changing their entire lifestyles, their landscapes, their everything, because some of this can be hugely expensive. We want to figure out how we can help people to do exactly what they're trying to achieve. So if they're trying to save, whatever it is, 500 gallons a month or whatever it is, to figure out what little projects or collectively how they can all add up together and how we message that out to them, because these dates, they're coming quick. I mean, here we are in October already. Who knew? The year's just flown by. And these dates are coming up quick, so we got to figure out how to get people in compliance and figuring out how we're going to do that. And then we need to make sure that we clearly point fingers at the state for doing this and not us. So,
Every chance I
get. Right? So, and let them know, hey, this came down from the state. This is not us. This is something that we're all now having to live with, and decisions that were made. So, just a comment, but I'm in support of this, and the Marietta Garden is great, and I think that's a wonderful showcase piece. It's a highly visible area with so many functions that go on down there with the amphitheater that's right next door to it, and people walk by and see that all the time now. So thank you for that, and I'm happy to move approval on this item.
Okay. We have a motion. Did we have more
I
questions?
have more questions, but I will second.
Okay.
I just have a few questions. I don't know. This is just for our retail customers in Western, right?
Correct.
Okay, so can we get a breakdown of those who have applied by division?
Yes. Let me look into that.
That would basically be me and Director Denstead and maybe a few, and
Well, some of them are public agencies, so we also are able to do public agency support. So like Rubidoux Community Services District is a
Okay.
public
That-
agency
that
that we're
was my
supporting. So
question.
that might be helpful.
can we still get a breakdown by
Let
division?
me, let me look into that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to caution, because this program runs through the Metropolitan Water District's vendor, and what they would be able to give us is just the address of participants, not necessarily division. It's not tracked at Metropolitan by the division in our area. So this would take quite a bit of staff work to actually pull this out by division.
To map it.
Metropolitan only shows it by Western Municipal Water District retail or wholesale.
Okay, okay. I'm just curious on, I just want to see what's coming down the pike, for my division specifically,
Yeah.
but.
Let me coordinate with staff. To Tim's point, we'll figure out what is this going to take us to do to get it done, and then we can
Well, and
float it up.
quite honestly, it would be pretty clear if it's retail or wholesale. It's going to be pretty clear when you look at it.
When I look at what?
Yeah, when you look at the data from versus retail versus wholesale.
Yeah, I just want to know
Yeah.
which ones of these projects are going to be in Division Two. I think that's exciting to me.
Yeah.
And then the second is, who's ultimately deciding which projects are selected out of all the applications you're receiving?
So through the SoCal WaterSmart website, everybody submits their applications through there. There's specific guidelines that Metropolitan requires because a portion is coming from Metropolitan, and then we just piggyback on their requirements. So Metropolitan, through their vendor, actually goes through, make sure that they meet all the requirements. If there are questions on the application, the cool thing is Metropolitan will reach out to us and say, hey, we have a question on this application, and then we're able to call the customer, ask a few questions, beef up their application, and then resubmit it.
That's really cool. Do you know if Metropolitan takes consideration needs, like low-income communities, DAC, anything like that?
I'm not sure about that. It's really focused on, their requirements are more focused on, can you get a water capture feature? Can you not put in, we don't want to see artificial turf going in. We want to see water-wise landscaping or certain plant materials. And so a lot of those factors are considered. I'm not quite sure about the low income or DAC, but we can look into that.
It's not included.
No, it's
It's
not.
first
Okay, I
come,
just wanna
first
know
serve.
what-
No, they don't.
However, there is a Metropolitan is currently applying for a grant to do a $500,000 direct install in disadvantaged communities. Special program, completely separate program, but this program is first come, first serve.
Okay. That was just they were popped up in my head. But I would like to see who in Division Two's applied, and we'll be probably having a new beautiful landscape. So if that's
Yeah.
if there's a way to make a list, that would be really cool. But otherwise, super amazing. Like I said, I'm happy to second this motion.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, Tammy, when the system is ready, if you do a roll call vote, please.
Director Torres,
Yes.
Director Dinstat,
Aye.
Director Roten,
Yes.
President Gardner.
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 4-0.
Thank you very much. Brings us to reports. Mr. General Counsel.
Yes, President and board members, as you know, this is the season when the legislature is wrapping up their bills and the governor is signing or vetoing bills. Our office will be preparing some updates for the board that we'll print out in the coming months. I wanted to highlight one bill, though, that was signed by the governor, SB 1243. It's effective January 1st, 2025. It amends the Levine Act, which is the act that was amended a few years ago to add campaign contributions to the types of financial impacts that can cause recusals. This increases the dollar amount from $250 to $500, which is probably a good sign for our elected officials in terms of avoiding conflicts. It also exempts certain contracts, including small contracts under $50,000, as well as contracts between public agencies. So it's probably not the amendment that most officials would like to see, but it's going in the right direction. So I'll provide more details on that in our written update. That's all I have.
Any exemptions for unions?
I'm sorry. There is one for unions, MOUs. Correct. January 1st.
Okay, thank you. Mr. General Manager.
All right, I've got several. All right, I'll build on General Counsel's actions of the governor to veto or sign bills. Yeah, as you know, he did veto our bill last Wednesday, SB 366, citing cost concerns. So we were researching that and making sure that that is what was really the cause. We did hear from Carla Nemeth yesterday, and she reiterated the same thing. So our lobbyists are researching that. The cost is about $7 million to do this. It's our perspective that that's money well invested in planning our water future on an annual basis. So if we're citing $7 million per year to plan our water future, seems silly to me.
Sorry, Craig, didn't mean to interrupt. Did Met ever come out with support?
No. So the one thing that did happen from a cost perspective is very late in the game, the State Water Resources Control Board gave the Department of Finance basically a $5 million per year cost for implementation of the bill. We have no idea why they did that. They're not asked to do anything in the bill. That was far more than DWR, which had about a $2 million cost to implement the bill, and everything in the bill was about modifying the California Water Plan, which DWR has to produce every 5 years. So, you know, we're not happy about being saddled with these annual costs when the water plan is written once every 5 years. So we're going to do a little research on what caused that. But I don't want to get too derailed on the veto. It's very, very disappointing. Huge support across the state for this. But I want to keep it in perspective. You know, we got through both houses unanimously. That's 2 committees. That's 2 appropriations committees that are responsible for evaluating the cost of the bill, and we were unanimous in both of those committees. So as frustrating as it is, one person, an important person, the governor, not agreeing with the cost, we can't let that stop the right thing to do, which is to continue to plan for the water infrastructure for our grandkids. So I just wanted to go through, we sent out notifications to all of our supporters, our funders, the boards. I sent out information to all of our managers within our retail service area, but we highlighted a bunch of things that I think are really significant. And I'll just read through those, and these are what we kind of said to all of our supporters. Don't lose sight of our incredible milestones. Unanimous support from both houses of the legislature, strong leadership from Senator Caballero, and a broad group of co-authors. We had co-authors in both houses that were super supportive. Collaboration of 3 major associations as bill sponsors, and those aren't water associations. This was counties, SEEB, and CMUA. Engagement of a network, and created a network of more than 200 supporters. That was not just water agencies. As you've looked at the supporters, that's cities, counties, chambers, huge support out of the ag community, north and south. Enormous support from water stakeholders that we haven't collaborated with on issues that we're now collaborating with. And I think really trying to bridge Northern California, Southern California, and ag on the water side, which, as you know, it's been cats and dogs for decades. And I think we made enormous progress. A significant shift in the discussion about water supply and the fact that we need to create water supply. And if you listen to Director Namath yesterday at Eastern in the roundtable, and she's out on the speaking tour right now, trying to get support for the Delta Conveyance Project. But it's all, she literally, to quote her, said, "The Delta is going to fail. It's only a matter of time. And we have to be ready for that, and we're not. We don't have the infrastructure in place to be ready for that." And there's going to be a lot of really hard questions asked of the water industry when we get an earthquake in the Delta, or rodents eat a levee, which has happened before, or wind has pushed water over a levee and caused it to fail. It's going to happen, and we want to make sure that we're continuing to advocate for the right things to protect our water system. We had UC research that's validated what we were asking for. We said 10 million acre feet of new water supply by 2040. They said 9 million acre feet, basically the same number. We are waiting for our next round of research to come in, which is going to be really important as we look to move our position forward, is the economic analysis on a statewide basis of the cost of inaction. So by not doing things like this, what's it going to cost the state? So we're working on that. The same UC researchers are doing that. We're waiting for that study to show up. And the advancement of a white paper on our water supply strategies. And really our strategy right now is, we have to change the way that we plan for water. We have to take baby steps. And the first step is always planning. And I think on a local level, all of the reputable water agencies are doing an enormous amount of local planning. And we're not seeing the same thing at the state, and we need to see that. So we're going to continue to push. We are going to regroup with our lobby team and the senator to see, how we want to move forward. I'm regrouping at the end of October with, I've mentioned this before, our Water Solutions Summit group. So we're going to spend a day brainstorming about, and that's a group of primarily water managers from across the state, of where we want to go next. I've been getting a lot of push from our supporters. Sign up, do it again, start it all over again. It's a lot of work.
You said I'm tired.
Yeah, a lot of work. It's easy for them to say, hey, do it all over again, right? paint the Golden Gate Bridge. Just get up there and start painting again. You can do it.
But that's what she said yesterday too, though. Carla said that yesterday.
Yep.
She said, right bill, wrong time.
Yep.
And,
Yep.
yeah.
And, you know, I've shared with you the challenges of that. That's fundraising, that's getting, you know, all these public sector entities to, you know, support the program financially and out there marketing it also. So, you know, it's a big commitment. So we need to think that through carefully before we say we're going to jump right in. But, you know, board's been fabulous supporting this. The partners in the region have been fabulous. The partnerships we've developed statewide have been fabulous. We'll, you know, we talk already about things that we would change in the bill. You know, you're really smart afterwards. There's certainly a few things that we would tweak if we do go back that I think would be very helpful on the financial side. And there were some arguments that happened. You know, we put things in the bill that we thought were really important to help support environmental benefits to the state. And some of those things turned out to be a little bit of a lightning rod by the environmental groups against us. And so we'll think really carefully about, yeah, I hate to say, we'll think very carefully about what we're offering to others, because I still think we were doing the right thing. But, you know, we're a little smarter now, and we've, after going through 2 years of negotiations and discussions, I think we'll have an even better handle on how to get this over the finish line. And, you know, hopefully, if it gets back to the governor's desk, we have a little better budget situation. So, you know, I'm disappointed, but I think we're really still doing the right thing. So I think there's still a lot of enthusiasm about it, as much of a setback as this is.
I have are you done? I have just one question and then a
I'll take a
comment.
breath. Go ahead.
Okay. It's Senator Caballero is done, right? She's termed out?
No,
Oh, she's not, so we have time.
2 more years.
Okay, cool. That's really good to know. And then I just want to say, Craig and team, I mean, this was a phenomenal, or very, very heavy feat, and it brought us out into you know, the forefront of the work that we're doing. It is incredibly disappointing. While I admire, you know, your tenacity to just let's push forward, let's look at positives. I do want to say it is. At least I'll take some time to just mourn the fact that all this time went in, all this work went in, mostly by you all, and then we did the little bit that we could. But you know, just great work, and I'm really sorry that our governor has failed us, and did not look into that work. So,
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, more locally. Residents Association of Greater Lake Matthews. I went and met with them last week, so it's good to be grounded after doing SB 366 all over the state. Yeah, you feel like you're talking in someone's backyard to a group. But Nydia Doolittle from our strategic communications staff sat right there with me for 2 hours. And they put together a great presentation. It's unfortunate that they didn't have a little better attendance, so we weren't speaking to a big group. But I spoke for, I think, over an hour, and that was because I probably had 45 minutes of questions. And so it's really interesting, the level of questions and the intrigue about where our drops of water come from. And something that, you know, I want the board to be prepared for, and this is going to come a lot with the conservation as a way of life regulations that you heard Michelle talking about, is, you know, outdoor water use is going to get squeezed down. Indoor water use is going to get drastically squeezed down from 55 gallons per person per day to 42 gallons per, you know, think about what you're going to do in your own house to cut 20% of your water use out in your own house. That's going to be really hard. Guess what's going to happen? You're going to have the same questions that I got at Raglan. Why are you allowing that new development, those new developments below Lake Matthews? We were all watching those happen off El Sobrante. yet you won't let me have water. So that's coming. So we have to make sure that we're very well versed on, the fact that, conservation regulations are something that the state felt they needed to do. Water supply development is what we feel like we need to do. Those aren't jiving right now. We feel like we have the water supply. It's smart to be efficient with water supply. We all have to be efficient with water supply, but it's two different worlds. And it's a hard,
Housing mandates.
and they're giving housing mandates, which require us to have the water supply for new houses. But residents obviously aren't in tune with all of that. We're operating such a different level than they are. That's going to be a popular question, and a good question. They should ask that because it doesn't make sense. So Raglan was, it's not the first time I hear that, but that was one of their big questions. And so I just want to make sure the board is hearing what the community is saying. Safety recognition. Our safety team is awesome, and we continue to get out amongst the El Sobrante staff, both El Sobrante and Meridian, to talk about how important safety is to us. And we take it very seriously. We walk the safety walk every single day. We actually brought out an ice cream truck to kind of have an event so that we could talk more about safety. And it was a great event. Really happy that we do that. Let's talk a little bit about awards. Western Water has been awarded 2 2024 STAR Awards from the National Association of Telecommunications and Advisors, California and Nevada chapter. So we got second place in social media efforts under 250,000 category for our video Western Water's Office. So that's been playing. It's really a cute video, kind of based on the television show The Office. We got fourth place for our Waterworks Wonders event. So congratulations to us and our team for putting together some really great products and getting recognized for that. We just found out that we're nominated for 2 Aqua Awards. The first being the Excellence in Innovation Award for our creative water management solutions on the North Well Treatment Project. So we've been talking about that. We're preparing a presentation for the board on that as we've, Paul will tell me we're not done yet, but it's operating, but it's not real pretty yet. We haven't finished the polish yet on it. So we are doing that, but great recognition from Aqua. It's awesome to be nominated. Then we are nominated we are up for the award for the Huell-Hauser Best in Communication Award for the Outstanding Public Outreach on the North Well Project.
That's amazing.
We miss Huell-Hauser. I did a segment with him, a full day with him, filming when I was at Orange County Water District, and he was a really fun guy and a really interesting guy, and knew how to communicate to the average person. He was great.
Oh, and he came and did a piece at the conservation garden too. Tim
Yep.
was there.
Yep.
That was a while ago.
Yep. And remember, Aqua did a whole series with him. They hired him to do a water information series. It was really neat. So those awards will be announced at the conference on Thursday, December 5th. So we'll have our fingers crossed again. And then the last one I want to talk about is the Delta Conveyance Roundtable yesterday at Eastern. Eastern put on a great show. Good audience. I thought the roundtable format was really interesting. It allowed Director Nemeth and Nina Hawk. You may not know Nina Hawk. Nina Hawk is a Met employee. She's responsible for the Delta issues for Metropolitan up in Northern California. We don't get to see her much down here at Met. She's up there all the time. She did a presentation which was really good. She didn't get peppered with questions like Director Nemeth did, but Director Nemeth is very patient and did a great job of taking time answer all those questions. You may ask, well, why did Eastern do this and Western didn't do this? Western was ahead of the game. We already did this. Remember, we had Graham Badner and Carrie Bucknam from DWR come and talk about the Delta program. IUA is going to do the same thing in November, so they already have that planned also. I have it on our agenda for next meeting to come back with a presentation and ask the board for a recommendation of support for the Delta Conveyance Program. We took a support position for the Twin Tunnel Program, but because it's changed, I would like to get support from this board on that program, and Director Denstad is going to be voting up at Metropolitan because Metropolitan has been asked to contribute more money to the planning effort, and so they're taking that to the board in December. So I think it'd be really good to have a support position if the board would like to take that. The dollar amount that Metropolitan's been asked for is $142 million. It's expensive to plan these giant projects, and the planning process is, as you know, extremely complicated, so predicting what the costs are going to be on a planning program are hard. And, you know, I know it's easy to pick on changes and why is the state asking for more money? We already gave them money, but this is a really, really difficult planning process. So I'm not surprised in the least that they needed more money. And even, you know, the Met board still hasn't taken an approval of the project. But to me, again, this is inexpensive investment in continuing the project. And so I don't think we can close the door on the project. And we'll talk about this next meeting. But I think it's really important to continue that project and the planning efforts. So that'll be coming next meeting. This is a really good document. Take that home and look at it. It's all about facts on the Delta Conveyance Project. We already saw this from Graham and Carrie back in June. But this is going to be a hot topic, I think, over the next couple months. So we should be educated on it. That concludes all of my topics. Happy to answer any questions.
Are there questions for the general manager? Good job.
Thank you.
Okay, directors' reports and requests. SAPA did meet yesterday. We got a briefing on the results of the first year of the cloud seeding effort. Lots of information, none of which is certain. The presentation was given by Desert Research Institute out of Reno, and it was a classic research meteorologist presentation. It looks like the program probably most likely did cause more precipitation to fall, but you can't quantify it real well in terms of how much. The real discussion was around what do we do for the second year of the program, given that there are 3 big fires and several small ones in the target areas for the program. So staff's recommendation was to postpone the second year, just put it off for a year and reevaluate at the end of a year. And the SAPA Commission supported that unanimously. So there will not be cloud seeding by SAPA in this coming year. And we'll reevaluate before moving forward in the following year. We have to see what this winter is like, what kind of recovery there is on the burn scars, if they ever get the line fire put out. So that was the big thing for the SAPA Commission. The PA 24, Project Agreement 24 Committee, which is the Brine Line Committee, met. There is an imbalance in the total dissolved solids that flow through the brine line in reality, compared to what gets projected, and there's a fee for that. And we agreed as a committee to direct the general manager to hire a consultant to look at reevaluating that fee. They were over-collecting for a while, they're under-collecting now, and the balance is just about even. So it's just time to take a look at that formula. The consultant will do that. Not directly significant to us, but the Ukaipa Valley Water District wants to acquire some brine line capacity. SAPA owns and is allocated to its member agencies 17 million gallons a day of capacity through Orange County Sanitation District. And they won't provide more until the 17 million flow is actually exceeded, even though the 17 million is slightly oversubscribed. The actual flow is about 12. So it takes a little more work for Ukaipa to get an allocation, but that is in process. It'll come back to the committee for an approval and a formal recommendation to the SAPA Commission later this year, so. But they have a good project. They're doing some desalting, and they're desalting their wastewater effluent, the treated wastewater, for reinjection back into the ground. So that was it for SAPA, MWD.
Well, can I piggyback on what you were just talking about with SAPA? So I did Oh Wow, and Oh Wow, we talked about the exact thing that you guys did at the commission, and for the cloud seeding program, and talked about the significant impact of the fires and a variety of different things. And one of the things that was an ask was to bring back an overlying map of the watershed and the burn scars and the fire-prone areas and what's been targeted, so that we can take a look at that and figure out some other things that OWOW might be able to monitor and keep track of, as far as the cloud seeding and a couple of other things going on for the watershed, because I know that was a significant concern, and seeing the devastation and just kind of knowing what the square footage, what the area is that's affected in the totality of the watershed, and what is that ultimately going to do to the water quality for the Santa Ana River and a couple of other things going out. So just to piggyback on what you got
Lot of
going on.
habitat in the Santa Ana watershed has been destroyed by
Yes,
particularly the line fire,
yes.
which
So,
is still burning and not contained.
yeah, and the airport fire as well, up
Yeah.
on the line and going through, Orange County, and talking about what would be coming down off of those hillsides on either side, right? The Orange County side and the Riverside County side, going into Lake Elsinore, and what would
Well,
ultimately
and a
affect the lake.
portion of the bridge fire affects the Santa Ana watershed as well.
Yeah. So we just asked for that, and staff was happy to do that, so they'll be providing that at the next OWOW commission meeting, so.
Hopefully the fires will be out by then and you can
Hopefully,
get a
gosh, fingers
accurate
crossed.
boundary.
This pop of heat does not help, so.
Does not.
It certainly does not, and keeping our fingers crossed. Metropolitan, so the meeting is met next week, and so I will be in attendance on that virtually, I'm going out to WEFTEC for the very first time, and that conference is going to be in New Orleans, and Metropolitan is actually receiving an award. And so I will be going over there. Dennis Ergman and I are going to receive that award and on behalf of Metropolitan, so I will keep you posted on that entire adventure. This is my first time ever to this conference, and I understand there are 21,000 conference registries, and they're coming from all over the world. So this is going to be a very different experience for me. I will hopefully be able to come up for air, and somebody hopefully will keep track if I come home on time and survive the conference. And I'm keeping my fingers crossed because everybody says that the weather is really a factor down there, and looking at some storm systems that may be coming in that may affect stuff. So I'm really keeping my fingers crossed that this was, it'll all go well. Okay, so more to come, and I'll be able to report on all of that next meeting.
Is the meeting location below sea level?
It's in New Orleans.
It's in New Orleans, so,
Well,
and it's.
Yeah,
and
much of the city is.
And the conference center is right next to the Mississippi, so, yeah, so keep you posted.
Take your life raft.
Yeah, keep you posted. Okay,
Okay, does that conclude Met?
that's all for, I have for Met.
Okay. Chino Basin Water Master met, and they actually had no action items in the business items. There are a few routine things on consent calendar. But the one business item was an update on work that the Water Master is doing on emerging contaminants monitoring. There are getting to be more and more things that either are regulated or are about to be regulated or may later be regulated. And it's important for a variety of reasons to the Water Master because they're in charge of the basin as a whole. But there is some controversy amongst member agencies of the Water Master. Several of the appropriative pool, the water producers and sellers, say, look, we already do monitoring, you don't need to do any more, which we, of course, would have to pay for. And so we're not sure that we want to do this, but it is moving forward. And much of it is to try to just collect information on what's actually in the water from different wells. Nobody's actually required to provide that data. Some of the ag producers are not real thrilled about sharing information about what's in their water. Some of the municipal, the water agency members say, read our water quality report, we're not telling you anything else. So it's just more Water Master history with the children fighting. And we'll get through it. So that's it for Water Master. CDA.
That will be tomorrow.
Okay. RCRA.
I think that person is not
Yes, that would be correct. WRCOG.
We meet next week.
Okay. And I hear Chris Gray gives really good presentations.
Yes.
Sarah Rep is also not here. I don't believe they met this past period. Aqua Region 9.
Aqua Region 9, obviously, we've got conference coming up in December, so I hope all of you can attend that. We've been nominated for a couple of awards, so fingers crossed that we'll come out victorious on that, and look forward to seeing everybody out in the desert.
Sounds good. Director's comments. Director Torres.
Not very many, I don't know. I thought it was cool for Latino Heritage Month. The country of Mexico inaugurated their first woman president. So for those who watched or thought it was exciting, I did. I gave an update, which I'm really sad about because I raved about 366 it was a couple of weeks ago, so I didn't know this was going to happen, but to heal healthy eating and living through the Community Health Foundation, gave an update just about what's going on with Western. They asked for a short one, and I did. A couple weeks ago, I will be attending a legislative update session with the Water Education for Latino Leaders this Saturday, but really not very much other updates than that.
Okay. Director Roden.
Not really an update. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I feel like you can't hear me. But I wanted to comment on the SB 366 veto. So I'm so encouraged that we are already looking at regrouping, will we regroup, how will we regroup, looking at, going forward, what lessons learned, those kinds of things. Some things are just literally out of our control, no matter, I feel we did everything possible. And here the bill went through unopposed, and it lands on one person's desk. And for whatever his decision-making ability was, he decided that no, this wasn't the right time, I guess is how he wrote it, based on the financial end of it, which, of course, probably wasn't 100% accurate that he was basing his decision on. But I have to say, and I hope I'm not sounding like a broken record, some of you probably know this story and some do not. So when I was elected to the Hope Valley City Council back in 2011, we had our election was in March of that year. We actually opened our doors on July 1. Well, the end of the legislative session that year ended, I think it was June 30th or 29th, I can't remember which day. And literally in the dead of the night, the main city financing for newer, quote unquote, newer cities, of which there happened to be 4 in Riverside County, we were the only 4 affected. Those monies were pulled from us. And for the first year, it was 47% of our general fund budget. So long story short, we had to open, we had voted, everything was in place, and we opened our doors, and we just started doing the best that we could and immediately working on how do we fix this. Fast forward, and I hope this is not going to be our story as far as length of time, but it did take us 6 years to get the governor to sign the bill, even though it would go through either unopposed or basically unopposed. It was a no-brainer. It was essential to our survival. We were the youngest of the 4 cities, so we didn't have anything built up in our, bank accounts. So whereas some of the other cities had been around for at least a few years, and not that it was easy for them. I don't want to minimize what they were going through either, but it finally happened, but along the way, because Craig, I think you were mentioning the relationships, I was thinking of the words doors and bridges. Doors that were open and bridges that were made in communicating and meeting all these different folks that need to have a part in it, in water and in making sure that we have it here in the state. And there was a lot of that through, it was it wasn't sort of, it was very much a whirlwind for me. So I don't remember all the details, which is probably fine because it was very stressful and challenging going through it. But yeah, so I love that we're not going to give up. I realize we do need to evaluate it, make sure that of where we want to go with it and where the supporters want to go with it. And I understand all that, but I'm encouraged by the positivity around, this was a setback for us, but it wasn't the end. And so I guess want to continue to share the encouragement that when something is essential, that I believe SB 366 and what it was trying to do is, and when it is important, keep going. Because eventually things will change. Different people come into office, different, things happen along the way. I mean, we have no way to predict that. So I just want to thank you, Craig, and our team and the extended team that did work so hard. I mean, you guys I feel myself getting emotional now. Sorry. You put heart and soul into that. And it didn't go unnoticed, and it was very worthwhile and valuable. It's sort of like the credit card commercial where it comes up with the thing that's priceless. that's kind of what I feel like this effort was. It's priceless. And we aren't even going to know until we go through whatever the next phase is. And I'm not making any assumptions or putting pressure, just encouragement. But we're going to realize things that fell into place during this process that are going to continue to help with it moving forward. So I had to share that. And Governor Brown, actually, it was Jerry Brown was governor at the time our bill finally got signed. He actually came to Jurupa Valley, to our city hall, and we invited all 4 of the cities that were affected by that bill, and he signed it in front of us. And, you know, he's an interesting guy. And one of the things he said in his remarks was, he said, yeah, you all are probably wondering why I didn't sign this before now, and I'm not going to tell you. And he thought that was so funny. And we're like, just sign it and go. Just one quick thing I wanted to share. One of our outreaches to him, I reached out, my son was a teacher at one of our middle schools in Jurupa Valley. I reached out to him and to their school, and they wrote letters to Sutter Brown, which was Governor Brown's dog.
One of 2.
Why they loved living in Jurupa Valley, who we were, what their favorite parts were about it. And we packaged those and sent those all up to him. So, I mean, we were looking for every avenue to get his attention. But it finally happened, and I have confidence that this will, because this is what SB 366 would have accomplished is essential. It's essential. And I'm hearing more and more from different people at different presentations telling our story, and that will all be part of it. So thank you to everybody, and what's the, I'm trying to think, chin up or whatever the word is I'm trying to
No
say.
pressure, Craig, just get it done.
Yeah. No, and it is no pressure. It is no pressure. So it's an encouragement and an energy and a positivity and taking our wins along the way as it progresses. So it's all good. Well, except for the veto. So thanks. Thanks for letting me share that.
Director Denstedt.
Thank you. And just to echo what Laura said, you know, this was a huge effort, and it did not, definitely yesterday when we were in the room and I told everybody and said, hey, we got to power on with Craig, there was a lot of applause from everybody at the meeting yesterday. And your efforts have not gone unnoticed. That's not just with our board, with our staff, who were a tremendous rah-rah team out there for everybody. This was from the region too, and people that now know Craig Miller's name and Western's name in the state because of everything that was done. So we'll continue to power on, and we will get the job done, and hopefully we can come up with a better tackling mechanism for get Met on board, and maybe we talk about strategies of how to make that happen too this time. So and do something a little bit different than what we did last time to get that support. But just a tremendous effort and a job well done for sure, even with the result. So I also attended the State of the City of Wildomar, so that was great. It's always fun and to talk with all those folks and see everything that's going on regionally. And then I also attended, Lejua had a town hall up in Canyon Lake, and that was about the alum treatments that are getting ready to go out into the lake again for water quality purposes, and to, you know, give that lake a better clarity and look and just right. It's an aesthetic thing. So, you know, so
100%.
Talking about doing that, and it's been done for many, many years now, and it's gotten very positive results. So we were just up there to let everybody know that these treatments and these boats are going to be out there, and the 4,000 gallons, I think, that they're going to be applying to the lake, and how they're going to go about doing that. So everybody, if they chose to have questions, so many people are used to it now and kind of send us now the questions of when are you going to do it again? Because they realize what it does and for lake quality. So, so that was all
Director
good.
Dunstad, just, it's crazy because I was literally just thinking about it, but I don't know if you knew, but I was part of the jar testing for that alum treatment over a decade ago now. We did the jar testing, presented it to SAPA, Lejwa, and then they decided to implement it. But the author of that study passed away just recently, and so I was thinking about that as Director Garner talked about SAPA, and I was like, man, like the difference he made, and like I was going to ask you if you knew if the alum was still going on, so it's
Oh,
cool
yeah.
to know.
No, and I was
Yeah.
part of that original vote when we got the funding for it, the original $600,000
Yeah, I remember.
that
That's
came
awesome.
about, and the grant funding that we applied for and stuff. So that's how long I've been sitting on Lejwa's board. So yeah, so it's definitely well received, and generally it's some people that are new to the area who are bought in Canyon Lake that want to come and ask technical questions and what's this going to really do to Lake, and there are others that are going, hurry up and do it. So, so just, you know, an informational thing, and hopefully it will continue to have the same results that it's had in the past, which have been very, very positive for the clarity of the lake. So water quality improves greatly with that. So, so I'll keep you posted on that, and I'm sure we're taking pictures before and after, just to see what that is, and we'll get results at the next Lejwa meeting coming up here later this month, hopefully. And then obviously I attended the Delta Conveyance Roundtable, whatever we're calling that, yesterday. It was a huge turnout and a lot of people that came from the region, so I was really happy to see that. And Director Luna was there from Met and LA's delegation, and so he had some very positive comments, which gives me some hope that perhaps LA is going to get on the bandwagon of what it is that we need to do, because they're a significant portion of the vote. And, you know, he's part of their committee up there and talks about Delta and doing a lot of things. So I think Miguel's comments were very positive yesterday. I was very happy and pleased to see that he made the trip all the way out here to the east and was part of that conversation. So I'm fingers crossed that when these conversations start happening at Metropolitan, we start seeing this in committee, and then ultimately it comes to the board for a decision-making process in December, that we'll be able to move some policymaking and some decision stuff that will be very positive for us moving forward in the future. Because there are still some delegations within Metropolitan that are really waffling over this and really having some heartburn over doing the funding over this. And given the fact that the state is not contributing to the efforts and they're not putting any money into the pot, it makes it a very difficult conversation to have of why is Met having to foot this bill. And, well, it's actually member agencies that want to foot this bill, and what we want to see as a positive measure moving forward for our future water supply. So we'll just keep plugging along and moving that message forward as best we can, and I will rally with my colleagues to hopefully have some positive outcome, and look forward to the discussion coming to this board and passing whatever we need to pass to try to.
Whatever you guys pass.
Yeah, so, yeah, exactly. So looking forward to the conversation and points to make when I have the big conversation of where the vote comes down to spending that kind of money. So, and with that, Mr. President, that will conclude my comments for today.
Okay, just a couple of things for me. This is also Breast Cancer Awareness Month. I see some pink here. That's important to me. My wife is a 24-year survivor this year, and I have a sister who's about a 15-year survivor. So early detection really, really works. And guys can get it too, although less frequently. And the other thing is today is the first day of Rosh Hashanah, the Jewish New Year. And so Shana Tova to all those who celebrate. And with that, our next meeting is October 16th at 9:30 here, and we will be adjourned. Thank you all very much.